Hello, everyone. I'm Symone Stanley with LakePoint Sports, and today I'm excited to be joined by MLB ESPN Insider Kiley McDaniel. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Of course. So we're super excited that you were able to jump on our platform. And I wanted to get some quick takes from you about some guys that we had come through LakePoint in the past couple of weeks, especially some of the 2021 high school players who have been looked at in the MLB Draft. And then we have a couple of 2022 guys that I want to get your thoughts on as well.
All right, let's get going.
All right, so let's start with Mason Albright. So Mason is a 2021 left-hand pitcher out of IMG Academy. He has been praised for his control and his command. What do you like about Mason?
Yeah, he was a standout over the summer at a number of events, and the concern was he's not the biggest guy in the world, and he was throwing 88 to 91 or so. And so you're mostly relying on his off-speed pitches and his control, and you kind of wonder what the upside was. And then this spring, he came out throwing a little bit harder, was up to 95 at times, would sit 90 to 93 for long parts of games. That improved his breaking ball a little bit, and then also gave a little more separation between his fastball and his changeup, which is his best pitch. So at this point, especially IMG being one of the easiest teams to scout this year with so many draft and D1 prospects playing in so many different tournaments and so many different places against strong competition, he probably fits somewhere in the second round. Even though he has, sort of a lack of upside, this kind of pitcher in college goes in the second round all the time. And he's seen more like a college pitcher just because of his polish and his experience.
Okay, that's awesome. And we got to see him in action at our High School Select this past week, so it's great to see him in action. Now next, I have to ask you about Tommy White. He is a third baseman from IMG Academy as well, and I'm super excited because he's headed to my alma mater, the NC State Wolfpack, so I really want to get your insight on him.
The bad news for you is I think he's going to turn pro. Obviously not a done deal. He's a prospect somewhere right around where Albright is, probably a little bit lower, I would say in the late second round or early third round. He's huge raw power, has hit a bunch of home runs, has made a solid amount of contact over the summer. The sort of concern there is he looks like more of a first baseman long-term in pro ball, right-handed hitter, where most teams prefer a left-handed hitter. And if you've watched him enough, you'll see him swing out of his shoes a good bit and swing and miss a little bit early in the count, but actually not strike out that much. There's a little bit of a concern about how much contact there's going to be against more advanced pitching. But in terms of the sort of makeup mentality, raw power, baseball instincts, all that sort of stuff is there. The question is just how much impact will there be?
Okay, so we're definitely going to be on the lookout for him. Next, let me ask you about Grant Taylor. So Grant is a right-hand pitcher for the Florence Falcons. He was at our PBR High School Select this past week as well. And Grant has been praised for his curveball and also his fastball and his ability to spot both sides of the plate. What do you like about Grant Taylor?
Yeah, the curveball is sort of the headlining pitch here. It's a now plus pitch that could, by its own sort of play in the big leagues. I saw him face IMG at a couple events and has really given their guys that are, going to be in pro ball at this point next year some real problems. He's been up to 95 both in the summer and in the spring. Like you're saying, he's sort of big, advanced pitcher. Sort of issue is the delivery and the projection in his body aren't quite what you want. He sort of is what he is right now, which is very good. Again, righty up to 95 with plus curveball. This kind of guy typically will go to college, and if he can perform for 3 years at LSU, then he'll go somewhere in the first 2 rounds out of college. So I think, not knowing what his signability is, anything like that, he probably fits as like a third or fourth round type prospect, and I would predict that he'll probably end up at LSU.
Okay, that's great to hear. So let's switch over and talk about some of the class of 2022 guys. So we got to see Elijah Green in action at LakePoint Sports last week at the PBR High School Select as well. He's a guy who's super explosive, super fun to watch because of his powerful hitting ability. What do you love the most about Elijah Green?
So I've written about him a couple times at ESPN.com, and I've taken some of my high-speed 1,000 frame per second video of him from earlier in the spring and posted it on Twitter. And he is seen generally from scouts as the best amateur prospect in America right now. If he was eligible for the 2021 draft, he would probably go first.
Wow.
That obviously makes him the number one prospect for the 2022 draft. And a lot of times with scouts, you'll ask them for comparisons. If you haven't seen a player, what player in the big leagues does he look like? And scouts are really hesitant to do that because, you were out of high school and I thought he looked like Kenny Lofton. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a fringe Hall of Fame type player. I'm just saying he looks like him. He's got a lot of the same qualities. And if I were to ask the scout, does he look like Kenny Lofton? He'd kind of hem and haw and be like, I don't know if I want to say Kenny Lofton, even though he would admit, yeah, all the different elements kind of look like Kenny Lofton. Yeah. And with Elijah Green, I asked scouts, okay, who does he look like most? And they go, oh, looks like Acuna. And I'm like, oh, but like, he isn't actually as good as Acuna. He goes, no, he might actually be as good as Acuna. And the scouts just have no problem saying that, which gives you an idea of what kind of talent this is. I mean, this guy's like 6'3", 210. He's a top of the scale runner with top of the scale power that hits in games, is always facing pitchers older than him, can play center field. Like, he basically checks every box to the point now where the question is really just like, the day you see him, is he going to hit well, or is he just going to have, you know, like a single and a couple pop outs, or, you know, exactly what you're going to get on a day-to-day basis. But like, those raw tools aren't going anywhere, and it's about as good as you'll see from an amateur player.
That's awesome. So we talked to him last week at the Select, and he said that his dream place to play would be with the Padres. I just wanted to get your quick reaction on that.
Well, the funny thing is, when I wrote about him earlier, Acuna, because they're both outfielders, is the natural comp. But if you're just looking for the physical tools, like how the body works, the power at the plate, how athletic he is, Fernando Tatis Jr. is the other name that came up. And because they play different positions, it's not the best comparison. But yeah, that sort of underlines what the Padres are doing in San Diego, is having a lot of impact even beyond what's happening on the field right now. Is there's like a cultural feeling that they're the place people want to be. Also, you know, San Diego, not the worst weather in the world.
Great place to be, especially on the West Coast. So lastly, let me get your...
No, I can't complain. I've been to the beach there a few times. You just walk up and down the beach and kind of lose track of time.
I can imagine that. I've only been on the West Coast once. I'm definitely trying to get back soon. So let me ask you about Termarr Johnson. So Termarr came to LakePoint Sports a few weeks ago for the Minority Baseball Prospects Takeover Tournament. He was an extremely fun guy to watch. Just seems like he's having a blast while he's out there playing. He's a 2022 shortstop for Mays High School here in Georgia. What's your take on him?
Yeah, Green is the sort of slam dunk top high school prospect and top overall prospect in the 22 class. For a lot of scouts, Johnson is the next guy. It might be number 2 on the list. You obviously have Dylan Lesko, another Georgia high school pitcher that could be in that mix. A number of, college pitchers like Connor Prelip at Alabama. So it's a little early to say anything beyond Green is seen as the best player, but there's a real case of Termarr Johnson as a dynamic athlete, plus runner, can play all the up the middle position, is a fantastic hitter, has all the in-game polish you want to see, has been performing at events for years. Guys were anointing him as a freshman, sophomore in high school that he might be the next CJ Abrams. Not quite the same sort of physicality, not the exact same talent, but just in terms of advanced, sort of has the elite athletic ability and also the elite in-game ability. He's right there with him. So I would say this guy has a very good chance to go in the top 10 picks next year.
That's exciting. We're definitely going to have an exciting draft this year, and especially next year with such highly praised guys of Termarr and Elijah coming out next year. I almost can get a little bit more excited about next year than this year.
Yeah, there's an argument to be made that if you go all the way down the high school class for next year, there's already 8 pitchers that I've identified that have first-round potential just on the high school side. The next year may be one of those sort of once every 10 years, if you want to call it, generational type talents of high school classes, and obviously the college class. We're just getting to see those guys for the first time in about a year right now. So I would imagine that would also improve. Whereas this year's class is seen as, good, but like sort of average. And next year has a chance in the 2022 class to be really elite.
That's awesome. So can you talk a little bit about your book, Future Value, before we get you out of here? We know we have a lot of listeners that just love to consume baseball content, and I know you have a lot of content coming out.
Yeah, I'm writing pretty regularly over to ESPN.com. If you follow me on Twitter at Kiley McD, I sort of tweet those things out as they come. If you watch the SEC and ACC games on ESPN Plus, I shoot videos every week about the draft prospects in each game. So if you're, watching those games, you'll probably run into me at some point. I wrote Future Value with my former coworker at Fangraphs, Eric Longenhagen. That's where I was before I was with ESPN. And our idea was basically we found ourselves writing at Fangraphs about a lot of the same topics over and over about how scouting was changing, that it was sort of like when Moneyball happened 15, 20 years ago, it was teams realizing that scouts didn't always know everything, and that integrating stats into what you're doing made a lot of sense because no teams were doing it. And so if you're one of the first teams to do it, it's a great advantage to be had. What's happening now in baseball is that with StatCast and TrackMan and all these various new sources of data, some teams, if they want to make the argument, can say that we can replace scouts with these numbers. I would say probably half to 2/3 of the teams are doing that at some level, even if it's as simple as we don't need to have a pro scout seeing a specific player in the minor leagues 3 times a year. We can see him 1 time a year. And then having all this data, we can take that one look and take all this data and end up with about the same answer, the same amount of precision. And so what that essentially is doing is then, taking away a couple scout jobs. And there's obviously more extreme versions of that where some teams like the Astros in the past have decided we don't need to have scouts going to AA, AAA, or big league games almost at all. Unless something weird's going on and we're about to make a trade, maybe we'll send a guy, but we don't need to have it happening at any regular speed. So what we were writing about is essentially from every perspective, from all the way down to high school prospects, parents, to somebody who has, a kid down the street that's a good high school player, to a fan of the big leagues, to a fan of a college team, fans of, prospect them. All these different people have various things going on with the game shifting in this way. So the book is hitting all these different areas. How does it change what you are as a high school player training to get a college scholarship now that all this data has invaded college baseball? If you're going to Vanderbilt or Arkansas, they need to see your TrackMan data before they can offer you a scholarship. In the same way, this is affecting the big leagues, how many scouts there are, what kind of players are getting drafted. There's all kinds of different trends going on now that we've reached sort of the second phase of Moneyball, where the scouts are a little less important in some ways and a little more important in other ways. And it's interesting, we thought, to explore all the different parts of how that works out. And we thought it might not be a book, and then we wrote it out, and it ended up being longer than we said it was going to be. There's just like a lot of different things going on. And the last element of that is, as a way to illustrate the value that scouts have, we have a number of scouts giving us stories, like JT Realmuto, Christian Yelich, Mike Stanton, just as an example of some of the players from Marlins. The stories about how they were first discovered, how they were found, how scouting works, like the intimate details of everything. And I think ultimately has a pretty positive tone about the future of scouting. It's just going to look a little bit different and maybe be a little uncomfortable as we get on this road. But I think the role of scouting in baseball is going to be as important as ever. We're just having a little bit of a hiccup here as everybody sort of figures out exactly what it's going to be.
Wow, definitely a lot. And I'm sure the book you cover seemed like it's an extremely passionate topic for you. And that's always great when you're reading someone's work about something they're not only knowledgeable, but passionate about. So I'm sure there's some great gems in future value for everyone to read and find out.
Yep, it sounds like people agree. I've had people stopping me at games, scouts, and telling me that they read it and they think it's great, and then they usually make fun of me for one part of it, which, some good-natured ribbing, I'll take it.
Right, that's the only risk about putting yourself out there. It's always be somebody come and laugh at.
And you have to be able to laugh at yourself. I get when you put out, 400 pages or however long it ended up being. It's like, I'm sure there's something in there that I'm going to cringe at one day, saying something the wrong way. And if a scout's not going to make fun of you, it means they don't care and they probably don't like you. So you take the jokes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kiley. You dropped so much information for everyone on our channel, and we appreciate you for hopping on our platform today. We hope everyone goes and checks out Kiley. He's, especially with the MLB Draft coming up so fast, he's got a ton of information for you guys to stay up to date on what's going on with the top prospects.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.